If you were new, the overall purpose of a PhilDev Summit is to drive forward Filecoin's evolution and improvement as a community. We're spread around the world. We're spread across so many different teams. This purpose is to align on how we're evolving. What are the really exciting things we need to build momentum about collectively as a community and ecosystem? Workshopping some of those deep improvements to make sure they get more concrete. We surface more opportunities and build momentum around them. And we also bring new people into the community and ecosystem, whether those are kind of partners, collaborators, builders, but others who can learn new opportunities to engage in the Filecoin ecosystem, harness some of the things we're building in this space, and bring them to action in other communities or businesses that they want to bring to market. So that's the overall purpose. And we've done that in different ways over time on each of the Dev Summits. The first two Dev Summits, FDS-1 and 2 in Singapore and Iceland, we're kind of back to back with each other. And a main focus there was aligning as a community around the evolution of Filecoin from a kind of capacity mining network into a useful data storage network. Lots of conversations about how Filecoin Plus was going to be involved in that, how, storage incentives for, empty capacity might evolve, how the technical requirements around data onboarding needed to change and be less focused on sectors and more focused on useful data, hot data. And also that's where we kind of initially aligned on paths to things like fast finality and interop between Filecoin and other metrics or other networks. We then evolved in Denver, just a little bit over a year ago now. That was where we initially aligned on how we were going to bring retro PGF as a pillar into the Filecoin ecosystem that would help power a number of different dev teams building in this space. We talked about how we would do compute and AI integration with Filecoin storage, had IPC talking about the new way to build L2s in the Filecoin ecosystem, and a number of those L2s talking about their needs and requirements to build on Filecoin L1. And this is also where we kind of launched the initial version of retrieval checks, which have now become a huge thing in the Filecoin economy and have drove a great increase in the retrieval performance and expectations across the network. Brussels, a lot of focus on hot data L2s. We started to see L2s bringing alpha products or MVPs to market. This is where we first broached the idea of Filecoin web services that Nicola put forward around how we might evolve Filecoin, not just as a storage economy and ecosystem, but something that had multiple different services coming to market, combining many different, DPIN services into a shared offering that people could purchase. Also, we talked about PDP as a hot storage proof to bring to market, how different DPIN networks, we had a whole DPIN day in Brussels where we could interrupt, and we started talking about some of the challenges related to growing Filecoin storage adoption and how that aligned with Filecoin economic value accrual as well. And then our most recent FDS was FDS-5 in Bangkok. And I'll spend a little bit more time on this one since it's the most recent one. But a big focus of this one is product market fit. Like, how are we bringing Filecoin as a storage service to market with different groups of users and clients? How are we evolving public goods funding in Filecoin, not just with retro PGF, but with multiple different network operated public goods funding systems that we can scale? We had a lot of storage provider cost savings that we highlighted and detailed that had actually been brought to market in advance of Bangkok. So that was a big focus. Also started talking about how L1 was going to evolve and getting really concrete on how we bring to market things like Filecoin web services. We initially broached some conversations about at least how we would talk about Filecoin L1 and L2s and how we would align them. That I think is still a topic for us to discuss more deeply in this FWS or FDS as well. Okay, so I went through all of our closing and recap and documents from FDS-5 and wanted to remind us a little bit as a community of what we talked about and aligned on. So we kicked off FDS-5 talking a lot about challenges, opportunities, next steps, where we needed to be improving. We had this awesome diagram that Juan had presented around kind of 4 main verticals, and we did some initial mapping of how different on-ramps are targeting those different verticals. And we talked about gaps in the storage and retrieval lifecycle that needed to be plugged both from a technical capacity and from a incentive alignment capacity. And we created this really awesome doc on challenges, opportunities, which I then shoved into ChatGPT and summarized. And I'll show you guys in just a couple of slides kind of what this came out. But I'd recommend reading back through this because there were a lot of really good data points on things, some of which we've already gone through and fixed and taken action on, which is great to see us executing on the things that we identify. We also spent a lot of time talking about this L1 evolution, how we might actually bring Filecoin storage primitives to life, how we would align L1 and L2 capabilities to cohesively bring Filecoin service offerings to many different end user customer profiles. And so we chose a proposed model for how we were going to evolve Filecoin storage services and started defining a set of next steps on how we were going to actually bring that to market. Talking about how we were going to make sure that that value accrued to Filecoin L1, that we had verifiable SLAs that we were able to monitor on chain, and changes we needed to make so that we could have payments and value accrual related to those on-chain measurable metrics and deals and SLAs that could also be governed by the network on clients' behalves. And as a reminder, we solidly agreed and reinforced for ourselves that, we have our L1 chain capabilities and primitives, but Filecoin actually goes far beyond just the exact primitives that live on the L1 chain. It also includes many of the L2s, on-ramps, and storefronts that are Filecoin services out in the world who are actually engaging and onboarding clients in different domains. So we're all Filecoin together, making this better. All right, here's the awesome ChatGPT summary of a different document, which was talking about how we operate as a community, talking about a number of changes around clarifying roles and expectations within the developer community, doing more planning and cohesive road mapping as a culture, kind of making sure that we celebrate and harness some of the things we've seen in other great organizations to embed more deeply with end customers and users, build more reusable modules, do more kind of direct storytelling and communication into different groups. And we spend more time cross teams sharing our knowledge and would encourage people to check in on some of these ecosystem-wide decisions and commitments that we synthesized. We also spent a lot of time talking about how we needed to evolve our PGF structures to not just include retro PGF, but also include a prospective PGF component, and that we needed to do that in a way that was publicly visible and governed by the Filecoin community with kind of representation from across multiple different network teams, helping execute those funding decisions. All right, so here's the awesome table that was actually generated by ChatGPT around across different focus areas. What were some of the challenges, opportunities, and next steps that we had synthesized with a strong focus around the most important and necessary areas of product market fit and usability and golden path being like the most high priority and like key blockers that will drive success in other future areas as well. But also, needs across services and apps ecosystem, improvement in how we do, the whole Filecoin value accrual economy and being able to do pricing in, a stable coin pegged storage service, and then improving things related to like narrative, cross-chain interop, et cetera. So a lot of good data harnessing here that then has driven, I think, much of this community's execution over the last couple of months. And we've actually done a number of the key next steps that we said we needed to do. So around that key top priority area of driving client success, adoption, and product market fit, we went and created a client success working group, which is one of the actions we said we needed to do to have a kind of cohesive view across the end-to-end storage user journey and to be looking at pain points, client adoption across, front-end engagement with clients, routing them to on-ramps, on-ramp customer service, getting, data all the way on-chain in deals. We also started and or scaled up. I think this was already happening with the UXit group in FF, but regular dogfooding of different on-ramps and golden path user flows, and then driving iteration. So not just doing a dogfooding and letting it sit, but driving follow through and improvement, and in some cases, entire rewrites of front ends to make that user experience much better for clients who are onboarding. And then we also saw testnets launched across Akave, Staracha, and Recall, each targeting a different community of client success users. And so it's great to see kind of the different assets that have been created in this domain to drive more client success and adoption. In terms of evolving the tech stack, we now have a first version MVP of a Filecoin web service on chain, which is PDP, which also is now integrated with a very MVP version of an on-chain payment contract that supports stablecoin payment using the newly released USDFC, which we'll be demoing more on Friday. Please come to our on-chain tech stack track. But it's pretty cool to see that, within kind of a quarter of work, going from idea alignment at FDS Bangkok to, sorry, there's a cat here, to actual delivery on chain with MVPs that people are literally doing hackathons around right now. And so that's a great improvement here in terms of getting the building blocks needed to drive on-chain payments and adoption in place so we can build even better on-ramps harnessing those capabilities. And we also launched, as of last week, I think, our first on-chain storage fee that is not gas-based or based on kind of transient congestion in the Filecoin chain, but that is directly tying the adoption of Filecoin on-chain services to increased value capture within the Filecoin protocol and fill-based economy. And so that's a first step, not complete, but a first significant step in closing the fill economic value loop that we talked about in FDS last time. So I'm pretty impressed that all of those things have come to bear just since the last FDS. Finally, around how we are scaling our community participation kind of efficiency as a group. There now is a pro PGF, thanks to all the work that Josh has done with PLFIF to bring an on-chain funding mechanism for prospective grants. It's just scaling up. It's still an MVP, but we from zero to 6 for that. PLDG has also been a major catalyst for growth in a number of ecosystems related to Filecoin. We also saw Staracha, DRAND, libp2p all see major improvements in their contribution based on kind of that influx of new amazing contributors, hopefully many of whom are joining us today. We also now have a new Filecoin Dev Digest, which is creating more cross-team transparency. And at least I have used AI to summarize a whole ton of learnings from past FDS and put those in each of the appropriate docs so that people have the faster summary. So there's a lot we've done, but as we shift focus to this FDS, we need to change our set of topics based on what we need in this context and where we have remaining gaps that we need to align on. So a couple of things that I would propose we focus on that are conveniently organized around each of the daily tracks is today, what's our big picture path to Filecoin product market fit? How is our tech stack, our storage offering, our crypto economics, and our community participation and roles evolving cohesively to drive Filecoin demand and utility? For tomorrow, client onboarding and sales. How are we scaling paid on-chain demand for Filecoin services? What are our remaining tech gaps, customer gaps, communication gaps that can help us provide a better client UX and ultimately really scale the number of clients that Filecoin is serving across multiple service offerings. For Friday, how we're evolving Filecoin's tech stack, specifically all of the new kind of proofs and service primitives we're going to be bringing to Filecoin's economy, hot storage, compute, retrieval, and how that's going to kind of intersect with scaling layer 2 or on-ramp go to market with these different customer markets that we're going to talk about tomorrow. For Monday, all of the new opportunities for builders now that we're having things like F3, PDP, FWS, CCDB, which is cross-chain data bridge. These are a whole ton of new builder primitives. What are the new opportunities for you to build apps, businesses, tooling, or things that solve your own problems that can harness these new breakthroughs. And a lot of our workshops in person will be actually making that practical and useful. Next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about economic growth, especially around native funding mechanisms, sustainable economic flywheel, and that L1, L2 value accrual alignment, making sure that we are positive sum between L1 growth and layer 2's building sustainable and successful on-ramp businesses, and how we make that connection stronger and more regenerative. And last but not least, how we're going to scale community capability, participation, and alignment as an ecosystem of humans that are coordinating with each other across many teams. So I've defined a couple of specific goals that I think we should shoot for, kind of grouped by area. Specifically around clients, I'd really like to see us continue to unblock and be more proactive about our client growth strategies, create some step-by-step roadmaps for how we're going to get on-chain paid deals, and then check off those milestones until we hit, say, 1 million ARR in on-chain paid deals. So setting some concrete targets and milestones, I think, might be really awesome for us to build momentum against. I think there's a lot of opportunity around building kind of the Filecoin web service evolution roadmap, getting early builders excited and onboarded, sharing blueprints for how to build services, and then making sure that we dog food that journey. So, it's new, it's hot off the presses MVP stuff. We would love the kind of collaborative evolution of that as we go. A lot around economics and aligning that L1, L2 alignment, making sure that we have a plan as a community. This is going to be contentious. It always is. There's many different stakeholder groups here, but for our long-term success, we need to have a regenerative ecosystem that enables L1s and L2s to be very well aligned with each other in achieving our shared goals. So I want to kind of map that flywheel and make sure that we have a path for how we're going to experiment with it. And then generally, from a community perspective, making sure we have the ability and the buy-in as an ecosystem for us to iterate and keep making improvements and stay agile and not get locked into one definition of success or capability. And we find many different ways for Filecoin to win and succeed and scale its contribution in the world.